I'm still wearing the peace shirt. Okay, there was a landlord of mine when I was 20 years old. And the landlord was really not a good landlord because there were things that he needed to do legally as a landlord that he was very reluctant to do. Anyways, when, we 20-year-olds just, brought the Landlord and Tenant Act to his attention, he looked at us all. And on his wall, he had a business degree from University of Pennsylvania. I can't remember his last name. His first name was Alan. And this was a long time ago. A very long time ago. 30 years ago, let's say. Okay, anyway, so I'm sure Alan is long, I don't know, because when at the time, Alan was probably about 75 when he was my landlord. I don't think he's alive now. But anyways, he was the owner of a prominent women's business clothing store called Millie, Milli, in Hamilton, Ontario, where I was going to school at McMaster University. Anyways, Alan from Millie, had the successful business. Millie. What kind of a person was he? Well, he told us when he was 75 and we were 20 that the law, when we were talking about the Landlord and Tenant Act of Ontario Province, Canada, he said, and I'll never forget it, the law is only as good as far as you can push it. Alan was Jewish. It was pretty obvious. I don't know why. I don't know why, because I grew up in a town where, I don't know, there was like 3 Jews or something. But he was Jewish. Somehow, something was like, I don't know. He's 75 years old and he acts like an Italian stallion. Rocky Stallone. No, it was like Italian stallion when Rocky was a porno star or something. Anyways, he's like 75 and then he's got this, a dress shirt unbuttoned about 4 buttons. He's got his hairy chest and all this gold bling on there. Does that look Jewish to you? I don't know, modern day, I don't know, a black basketball player or baseball player wearing too much bling when they're in, I don't know, baseball uniforms. I don't know. Is it a team sport or, it's you out there looking stupid. You're supposed to be playing baseball and you're dressed like you're going clubbing. What the fuck is wrong with you? I don't know. A lot of them, they play baseball, but they're stupid upstairs. I don't know. Anyways, Alan from Millie, who somehow, I don't know what's the point of it, I don't know. Jewish business practices. Just because the law is only as good as far as you can push it. In other words, I don't want laws in my life. I don't believe in having any laws whatsoever. So what do you got for me, kids? Landlord and Tenant Act. In the end, we couldn't deal with Alan. We had to deal with. It was one of his sons, I think, was more reasonable as a landlord because it was owned by the business and it was a family business, and Alan clearly was a pain in the ass, not only to us but to his family. All the same, your family is your family and your family business is doing very well and it's still there. I did look it up on Google Earth recently. It's still there. So, what is my problem with Alan from Millie? He's not a civilized man. Civilizations require laws. And that's the history of law. And you can take a course in law, and a lawyer can teach you all about that. But if you weren't Alan, and if you were the students, 20 years of age, looking at this with fairness in our hearts and minds, and looking to see what are the requirements under the laws of Ontario Province. What are we looking at when we're looking at the landlord for whatever the problem was? We are looking to the landlord to follow the spirit of the law. What does that mean? It means don't go having like 12 lawyers looking for loopholes, an old case law of where somebody got away with murder or whatever this particular law was, because they pushed it so far that it didn't apply to them. People who are in the spirit of the law are, what was in the minds of the legislature at the time when they passed this law? It was consumer protection. And the tenants are the consumer. So that's what the spirit of the law was. And what is it? It's about housing. Because housing is directly related to humans and having basic standards about how people are going to be housed in Ontario Province, knowing that there's a rental market. So the spirit of the law is that there are human beings who live in Ontario Province. And quite often they have to rent places to live. In Ontario Province, in Toronto, it gets exceptionally hot in the summer, and the rest of all of Ontario gets exceptionally cold in the winter. So people do need houses. People can't live in a city park. And yet, we often see on Toronto news that there are homeless people living in tents in city parks, and nasty fucking Nazi Gestapo Toronto cops enforcing laws that say, doesn't matter what the fuck you are, but you got to get off our fucking property. We're the city of Toronto. And it's like, well, fuck off. City of Toronto, you're a government, and governments are for people. And if you can't house these people, City of Toronto, and the province of Ontario can't house them, and the government of Canada can't house them, and they can't stay in a city park, and it's Canada, and it's too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter, you are basically telling the homeless to drop dead. And you do. Every day, governments of Canada, various levels, you do. You tell people all the time, tough titty. But Justin Trudeau has got, this blank check for his business buddies, like $500 million to Imperial Oil of Canada. Their COVID compensation or something. Justin Trudeau commits treason all the time against the people of Canada. And the rest of the politicians of the governments of Canada do the same thing. No respect for basic human rights. Why isn't there a basic human right in Canada of a place to live? Shouldn't it be the first priority of the government of Canada, given our hot situation in the summer and our unbelievably cold situation in the winter? Shouldn't be housing the number one priority all the time for the government of Canada and the provinces and the cities? Because the number one thing that happens when people come to Canada, whether they're born here or they move here, is that they gotta have some place where they can escape the elements. And we got nothing going on. And everybody knows the homeless problem has been going on and on and on. And $500 million is gifted to Imperial Oil Corporation, an Exxon Mobil kind of corporation, a Rockefeller Corporation. And there's no money for the homeless. I got to tell you again, Justin Trudeau has committed High treason. And every other Prime Minister of Canada has committed high treason against the people of Canada. And it's time that we start exacting penalties. It's time for heads to roll. It's time for us to bring the guillotine in from old time France. In Ontario, they used to hang people for serious crimes. Is there no more serious crime than gifting $500 million to Exxon and denying the most basic need of human beings in Canada, housing? I don't know what the homeless population is, but there's also an awful lot of people who live in rental housing when they should have a house that they own themselves, but they can't because of the vicious investor class of Canada and other countries that buy up all of the housing meant for Canadians. And either they leave it vacant or they rent it out at exorbitant prices. They expect to have a Starbucks coffee or a Tim Hortons coffee served to them when they go through the drive-thru by someone making minimum wage who's never going to be able to get into the housing market and at minimum wage can't afford to live on market rent. And government subsidized this, they just don't even bother. They haven't built any kind of affordable housing. So there ain't none. It's ancient. Justin Trudeau's father in the 1970s had a government program called MERB to build rental housing. It was phased out somewhere along the line, and Justin never even looked into what his father did to bring it back. Then again, we still wonder if Pierre Trudeau is Justin Trudeau's father, or whether it really is Fidel Castro of communist Cuba. I don't know if I talked enough to get you interested.